Hello everybody, my name is Richard Jorgensen and I'm the Marine Biology and Ecology Instructor for the Club U program at the University of Utah. And for just a second we're going to step away from the water and move more towards the land. Now we're going to talk a lot about ecosystems and different animals that will work together, symbiotic relationships, but also how animals and people will work together. And one great example of this is the honeybee. Now I have several slots here from a honeybee hive that I got from the Loveland Living Planet Aquarium, which includes several sections of honeycomb. Now this section here is just wax, there is no honey in it, but we'll make sure to talk about the honey in a little bit, and I'll even show you how to collect / harvest honey and some of the side effects / unexpected problems you may run into while keeping a hive. Now I'm not in charge of the hive at the Loveland Living Planet Aquarium, but I have honeybees at my parents' property. And first thing I want to say about honeybees is there's no need to be afraid of them. I know a lot of people are afraid of bees, and a lot of the time they get that fear from the yellow jacket wasp. Now, yellow jackets are one of the few animals in the animal kingdom that are just mean for the sake of being mean. They're predators. They have the ability to hunt, catch, and kill small prey such as mice. And so a lot of people will see a wasp get stung. Okay, I'm going to associate yellow and black stripes with ow, and they see a honeybee and think the same thing. No need to be afraid of honeybees. They're super gentle and they're super kind. There's even been times where I would go out into the fields at my parents' house and there'd be a little water trough and one of our honeybees would be drowning in it. And so I would scoop it up out of the water with just my fingers and I'd walk it back to the hive, set it down on the hive, and she'd crawl back in and none of the other bees cared, and they're just all very gentle, very easy, very, very kind. Alrighty, now let's talk a little bit about killer bees. Now, what's the difference between a killer bee and a honeybee? Honestly, there's not a ton of difference between the two. A long time ago in, I believe it was 1957, is when these bees escaped a laboratory in Brazil. What the people there were trying to do was they were trying to take the honeybee but make it be more productive, have it produce more honey. But because there would be more honey, there would be more threat to predators finding it and taking it. So they also needed to make the bees a little bit more aggressive so they could defend themselves better because they'd have more honey. So more demand and more demand on both parts. Eventually, the scientists in Brazil got just the right combination of aggression and work ethic, and they escaped, like I said, in 1957. And so that was obviously down in South America, and they started making their way up to North America in 1990s-ish era. And they're still kind of in the southern states, so up here in Utah, we don't have to worry about it too much. I think they predict that killer bees will make it to Utah in like 30 years or something like that. But as we know, science is constantly changing, so that number may have been updated. They may never get here, or they might get here tomorrow, because we already know that murder hornets have made their way here, so who knows what could happen next. Alright, so a moment ago, I talked a little bit about the honeycomb. And a lot of people ask me, well, how do they make the wax? And essentially what the bees will do is they'll go out and as they're pollinating, they'll chew on different fibers and different things in there. And there's a special gland in their abdomen. I can never say that word right. You know what I'm trying to say. And that special gland is what they use to create the honeycomb. And now, obviously, a relationship between bees and people is the people give the bees a place to live, and oftentimes beekeepers will ask around in local areas if they can keep hives on their property, which is the case at my parents' home. The bees aren't my parents, but a beekeeper came to them and said, hey, you have a huge piece of land. Would you mind if I put honeybees there? And so the honeybees have a great place to live because my parents have fruit trees and gardens and all sorts of stuff there. So they have a great place to live, a great source of food, and in return, the honeybees create honey, which we then take and then eat. But we also use beeswax. This here is a processed bar of beeswax, and in the olden days, of course, they would make candles and stuff out of it. However, there's many uses for it today as well. I make a few different kinds of jewelry using eco-friendly materials such as jute rope or bamboo string even. And I'll coat anything I make with beeswax because it's a natural water repellent and it helps strengthen the fibers. So nothing goes to waste in a beehive, whether it's the wax or the honey. And then of course there's royal jelly as well, which is a whole other topic. But royal jelly is a little bit different. It's made exclusively for the queen of the hive, and so there's not quite as much of it. So let's talk a little bit about how man and honeybee began to work together. So honeybees were domesticated over 70,000 years ago in ancient Egypt and have been kept by man ever since. Now originally, to keep a beehive, a person would take just a piece of wood and drill holes into it and present it to an already active hive, and then a young queen would move out into this and they would take that and start their own hive, and that's how they would grow hives. Nowadays it's a little bit easier. We use things called slots, and here is one. So this is an empty slot that you put down into the beehive, and you can see that all of this is man-made. All of this black bit's man-made, but it is shaped on the inside with the honeycomb shape. So the bees are more likely to latch on and to start using it. If I'm going to flip this board around, you can see honeybees have filled this with wax. And this particular slot doesn't have any honey in it, but we have a few other slots that do. And I'm going to be covered in honey by the time this is all said and done. Alright, setting this over to the side, let's talk about honeybee anatomy a little bit. We won't get too much into the specifics because this is mostly about how man and honeybee work together, so the relationship between man and animal. So we have three kinds of bees. We have queen bee, drone bee, and honeybee. The queen is the only bee who is allowed to lay eggs and have them be fertilized, and she'll produce over thousands of eggs in her lifetime. The drones are the only males in the hive, and they're in charge of defense as well as keeping the hive at the right temperature. They'll vibrate their wings if it's too cold and generate heat, or they'll use them as fans to cool down the hive if it's too hot. They're also in charge of fertilizing the queen's eggs. And the honeybees have several jobs. When they're young and haven't left the hive yet, their job is to take care of the even younger honeybees, so the larvae, so little squirmy, wormy kind of deals. And then as they get older, they'll help make honey in the hive, and then once they're old enough, they'll leave the hive. And the only way honeybees will communicate with each other is through pheromones, or through smell. The only exception to that is what's called a dance.
So this is a hive at the Love on Living Planet Aquarium, and as you can see here, this little bee is doing what's called a pollen dance, showing the other bees where they can go and find food. And you'll look and see that she'll repeat the dance over and over, and then eventually another bee will join in and carry the message on.
Alrighty, so we've talked a little bit about how honeybees help people and how people help honeybees. But now let's talk about some of the downsides. Bees do have stingers, and they do sting sometimes. However, this is only if they're incredibly provoked, or they feel like their home or their honey is in danger. Oftentimes, beekeepers won't even wear a suit. I know mine doesn't. His bees are so used to him and are so tame that sometimes he won't even wear a hood. He'll just go out there and harvest the honey, and they're totally fine with it. And a threat that the honeybees face when a bee farm has been created, lots and lots of bees in one place, that can attract parasites as well as predators. So main predators, the bear. We all know bears love honey, and they will destroy an entire bee farm if given the chance to just get at that honey. And some of the parasites that honeybees can get are different kinds of mites. There's a beetle that can invade their homes, and there's even a moth that can invade their homes. And so we'll talk a little bit about specifically the moth. It's called a wax moth, because the honeycomb that I have The reason I was able to get it from the aquarium is because they found one wax mothworm in it, and they're like, get rid of it, we don't want it infecting the rest of the hive, and so I was able to take it. So let me grab that real quick. Alrighty, we're going to go selfie mode for this portion because I can't get the camera to stay up. But here I have 3 slots of honeycomb from the hive, and there's 2 different kinds of honey you can find in them. There's capped and uncapped. Now, uncapped honey is honey that is not ready yet, whether there's just not enough of it, or there's too much water so the bees are letting it evaporate, or whatever it may be. And capped honey is the finished product. The bees are happy with how it's turned out, and they'll put a layer of wax over the top of that. But let's focus in on this. I'm sure you can kind of see the little pattern in there, and that is actually wax. Now we talked a little bit about wax moths. This is what you can expect to see, and all of this is actually silk. This is all silk produced by that moth, and if you look right in here, I've actually got the little bugger in here still. Just right up in here. Give him a poke, see if we can't get him to move. Don't know how well you can see it. So let's go ahead and extract the little guy. Alrighty, let's go ahead and extract that wax moth larva. I have to go through some of the wax in order to get in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pull apart the wax on either side of him so he won't have quite as many places to go once his little home here is kerplunked. Come on out, dude. Yeah, he is none too happy with what I'm doing right now. So you can see here, it doesn't really know what to do. It relies on hiding in all of that comb for protection. Now that he's been detected and removed, he's not keen on really doing much of anything. Let's try extracting some honey/beeswax out of this mass of comb that we have here, and we'll see just how dirty I can get in the process. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and start with this side that had our little worm. Now, normally we'd be working with capped honey, but since the keepers got rid of this hive prematurely to ensure that the waxworm didn't take over, we're going to pretend that this is all capped honey. And luckily for me, I can take this beeswax and use it in other projects to make sure that we are using what we get in nature responsibly, and make sure that we have a use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without kind of attitude. So normally you would take a knife and you would go down the top and uncap all that honey, and then you'd stick your blade in there. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm just kind of making a line up at the top. This is going to be a little bit shaky on the table, so hopefully you don't tip over. And then we just go right on down. Alright, here it comes. And just like that, there we go, leverage. And then we would go through and repeat that process throughout the entire thing. And then we would take all of this and process it. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is take all of this and set it over to the side. because we'd like to try and keep the honey as clean as possible.
Alrighty, so we've cleared away a few segments of that comb, and then here is the rest of it. After it's scraped off, it comes up nice and easy, and what a beekeeper would do is they would take this background, clean it up, get it all brand new, and put it back into a hive where they would take out a good slot and start anew. Now, you have to forgive the mess. I have a very small apartment. You can see some of my workstation over to the right there. But go ahead and ignore that, and let's try and separate this from the bottom pieces, because as I said before, I left these together for too long, and now the honey has made it difficult, to say the least, to get to the actual honey. Ooh, yummy. All right. So you probably heard all of that popping as I was pulling this up. And if you look, right here and right here is missing. So this is capped honey. This is the good stuff. This is the stuff that you could buy at the farmer's market or what have you. And now it looks like the rest of this is uncapped but has honey in it. So we'll go ahead and work on this. But we'll also take a look at this nice section here. Got lots of nice wax and some capped honey. And this is what you can expect from a premature hive. From a mature hive that hasn't had to be dealt with due to parasites, this entire thing would be covered in honey. And I strongly suggest that after the class you go and look up a little bit about honeybees and see what else you can learn, as well as other ways that people and animals coexist together and not only exist together but have a symbiotic relationship together. Thank you for watching this segment. We'll go ahead and get back to the class portion. Alright, just kidding. We're going to look at one more thing here. As I was preparing to extract the rest of this, I was noticing that I had a few of these little caps popping out. Now you probably can't see that very well due to the fact that it's a mostly brown and black shape on black gloves, but all the little caps were very much a cap. They popped off. So we'll go ahead and look at that a little bit more, and once I get this bowl cleaned out, I'm going to scrape this and we're going to get some of that honey out of here, and we'll kind of watch that and see how that ends up looking. Alrighty, I got the majority of the little specks out of there. And we're going to go ahead and put this brown wax in this bag, because the wax that I'm about to extract that has the honey in it is a different color. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that as well. Alright, go ahead and set this over to the side. Alright. And so this is more or less what we're going to be finding in there. And if you look, you can see the honey sticking absolutely all over me. So this should be exciting. I'm going to leave the capped area alone, because I'm going to try and separate uncapped from capped, since they will be processed differently. So let's go ahead and take a look-see here. And you're like, but I can't see, your glove's in the way. Here we go. Alrighty. You can see all that honey just oozing out. Let me see if I can grab this before I get stuck on anything. Probably won't be able to. Come on. So look at that. That's what we're after in here. You can see that all the honey was in this area here. This was pretty much dry, and down here was pretty much dry. So let's go ahead and get the rest of it. Alrighty, so we've gone ahead and got all this, and the majority of it is just wax, and there really isn't much of a difference between the light stuff and the dark stuff. However, we did get some of that uncapped honey. I'm going to go ahead and strip the rest of these
and then we'll take a look at what we have at the end. Alrighty, we've got all of our raw honey and a thing of cheesecloth. I took all of the honey and the wax from the capped sections of the combs and just mushed it all up until it was kind of the consistency of oatmeal that had far too much honey in it. Put a couple layers of the cheesecloth down, and now I'm letting gravity do the work for me. And at this rate, it'll take pretty much all day to do it. I think most people will typically just do one layer of cheesecloth a couple times, but I really wanted to make sure I kept as much of the waste out as possible. Alright, as the cheesecloth sits in the hot water, little by little the wax starts to melt and come out of the debris. Moths that will take their homes and use the hive for themselves and can end up killing out a whole hive. And there's two different kinds of honey in a... Dang it. Sticky, sticky honey. Look at all that. Oh, yeah. Did I lick it? I'm gonna lick it. Oh, yeah. That's good. Ooh. Ooh, look at that. Sticky, sticky honey. Oh, baby. Now I'm really glad I was filming. Look at all that capped honey.